Well, Mitch was talking about the melt there in his news headlines. Last week, we heard how this winter's heavy snowfall is affecting maple syrup producers across Prince Edward Island. And the deep snow, still lots of snow out there, is also challenging for the owners of apple orchards across the island. They're anxious to start pruning their trees for the season, but getting to the orchards is tough. And even some branches are still buried deep in the drifts. Mark Ashley owns Wintermore Orchard in York. John Brady grows apples at Brady's Farm in Tyne Valley. Island Morning's Nancy Russell met up with the two members of the P.E.I. Apple Growers Association to find out more about the season ahead.
We're here at the Legacy Garden in Charlottetown because the idea was that you were going to give me a little pruning demonstration. But what's the situation here?
Well, snow, and more snow, I would say. It seems to be the case all across the island. My friend here, John, lives up in Tyne Valley. They've got snow up there, and we have other friends down in Kings County, and they have snow down there. I'm just out here in York. Most of my orchards under between 3 and 6 feet. I should be walking on about a foot right now, maybe.
Compared to your usual timeline for a season, where are you this year?
I think I could speak for all growers when I would say that we'd be at least a month into pruning right now, and I don't think any of us have seriously started. We may have gone out and kind of stretched our legs a little bit and had a look around and maybe pruned a few trees, but it's just not worth doing. A lot of the bottom scaffold branches are still under snow, so even though we might be delayed, a little glum about it, it's not the end of the world. We'll get to it. And we'll get to the varieties that are most important first for us, and they differ by orchard. I guess the biggest worry right now is that it all melts. The earth warms up, it melts from underneath, and it pulls down. And as it pulls down, it pulls the ends of the branches, creates a peeling effect against the trunks of the trees and splits branches off. Branches grow back. The trees can recover.
John Brady, Brady's Farm, Tyne Valley. Well, we have 3.5, 4 feet of snow in the orchard, and as Mark said, it's not a good time to really be around the trees when there's that much snow. You can do more damage than good at that point. So we're behind, and we'll have to wait for some of the snow to go before we really get into pruning, which means pruning will carry on later into the year than it normally does, because pruning's an essential part of growing apples. It's an unappreciated part by the general public, a very labor-intensive job, and it takes a while, and it has to be done.
So when you talk about extending your pruning season, how much longer?
I always aspire to finish pruning before the black flies come out, but it's never happened yet. And you really can keep pruning even when the trees start leafing out and so on. It can be done, but then of course you get busy with the other things that you have to do too. But it's something that you just work at till it's done.
Any concern about damage to trees?
Yes, when you get a heavy snow load, there's always that worry, particularly with some varieties which are more likely to lose branches, but branches do grow back. 2001, we had quite a bit of damage from snow, so it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen.
How have you seen the industry grow over the years that you've been involved?
The desire for people to have locally grown apples has really started to make a difference. It's not just an apple, but where the apple comes from. They're quite happy that they're buying P.E.I. apples of all different varieties.
I think people are better educated about farming, or they certainly have been. I think we've had a lot of interest by some growers into joining our association and planting some plots of trees. So that's something that's going ahead right now. Most of the growers have added to their orchards over the last few years. We're cautious doing that. We look at trending, and we'd like to only expand with what people want, with the demand. So there's a lot of interest by people coming in to see things constantly evolving in our orchards.
You have a pruning workshop that has been postponed once.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Pruning is a foundation of developing a good crop, and it's something that you really have to see. I don't think it's something you can learn from a book. Every tree grows differently, and what we're going to do is gather together the different orchard growers, and they're going to demonstrate how they would prune trees, everything from trees that were 1-year-old widths when they were planted last year to 2, 3, 4-year-old trees, up to trees 40 years old, larger size trees. So one of the hardest things to do is to cut large branches out of your tree. You have to have real faith that that's going to produce more quality apples. And regarding the weather, as much as we see all the snow right now, we're the beneficiaries of a very favorable climate. We have a good climate for producing apples. A week in the spring is a day in the fall. Come August the 9th, I'm going to start to pick yellow transparents. The season always catches up with itself. If the trees are held back, then they tend to rush their development once they get going. So if not by August the 9th, usually by about the 1st of September, we're pretty much on par with where we were in an average year.
John's right on the money with the way that our climate is. It will catch up. One thing that always worries us, of course, is how cold is it going to be when it's blossom time? Because bees are lazy little fellas. You can walk right over the hive and kick it and say, you kids get out of bed and get to work, and they'll look at you and go, are you kidding? And they'll just turn around and go back in their hive. There's nothing you can do about it unless you want to get stung, and still nothing you can do about it. So it's one of those things where we just have to have our fingers crossed. Maybe those few days of blossom, usually it's only a week or a little more than a week on a good year. Hopefully we'll get our winds out of the south and not out of the north and get some of that cold air off the water.
So that's your next weather concern?
That would be our next weather concern. There's always something coming down the pipe that we have to keep our eye on.
Thank you both very much.
Oh, not at all. Thank you.
Mark Ashley operates Wintermore Orchard in York. John Brady grows apples at Brady's Farm in Tyne Valley. The P.E.I. Apple Growers Association offering a free pruning workshop on Saturday, May 2nd between 2 and 5 at Brady's Farm. That workshop was supposed to be held last weekend, but it was postponed because of, yes, you guessed it, the snow. You can find out more at islandapples.ca. And our thanks to Island Morning's Nancy Russell for bringing us that story. 21 minutes now past 7 o'clock.